My name is Ren Mira, 32 years old. The fluorescent lights in the police station flattened everything into shades of gray, as if the room itself had been drained of life. I sat at the edge of the chair, hands clasped so tightly in my lap that the bones of my knuckles turned pale. My fingers trembled no matter how hard I tried to still them. Across from me, Derek paced with the restless energy of a man performing for an audience. He ran a hand through his carefully gelled hair, glanced toward the two-way mirror, and spoke louder than necessary, like he knew someone important was listening behind the glass. "She's lying about everything," he said, voice weighted with fake concern. "Check her bank records, you'll see. She's desperate for money. She probably sold him to pay off her debts." It was the third time he had repeated the accusation, as if sheer repetition would carve it into fact. He turned, gesturing toward me like a lawyer cornering a witness. His mother, Constance, sat beside him, upright and rigid, her lips pressed into that familiar line of disdain I'd known for years, the one she used at every family dinner when she caught me making the mashed potatoes differently than her, or folding the napkins in the wrong direction. Only now her disapproval had sharpened into something venomous. Officer Hallstead typed steadily at his computer. The clack of his keys punctured the silence, each sound like a judgment written in stone. Every now and then, he looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Sympathy, maybe, but overlaid with doubt. He was already cataloging me as the unreliable mother, the woman who couldn't keep her life together. My 7-year-old daughter, Vera, sat in the corner. She was so small in the oversized plastic chair that her legs dangled above the linoleum floor, swinging back and forth. She clutched her stuffed rabbit to her chest, its once white fur now gray from years of love. Her eyes flicked between the adults, following every word, though no one seemed to notice her presence. "I would never hurt my son," I said, forcing my voice into steadiness, though it cracked anyway. "Jonah is only 3 years old. He's probably terrified, and we're wasting time sitting here while he's out there somewhere." Constance leaned forward, her voice slow and deliberate. "Or you know exactly where he is, yes." Her eyes gleamed with satisfaction, as if she'd been waiting years to deliver this line. "I always told Derek you were unstable, always said you'd be the death of those kids. And now look what's happened." Her words struck like physical blows, tightening my chest until I could hardly breathe. This was the woman who had spent a decade undermining me with passive-aggressive jabs, who smiled sweetly at neighbors while whispering poison behind my back. Now she was weaponizing my missing child to paint me as the villain. Jonah's face flashed before me, his mop of dark curls, the way he'd been roaring like a dinosaur at breakfast only that morning. I'd watched him laugh, milk dribbling down his chin, toy T-Rex in hand, and now, gone. Hallstead finally looked up. "Mrs. Mira, you need to understand the severity of this situation. Your son has been missing for 3 hours. If you know anything about his whereabouts, now is the time to tell us." "I've told you everything," I said quickly, my throat burning. "We were at Riverside Park. I answered one phone call from my brother about my father's surgery. Less than 2 minutes. When I looked back, the swing was empty. Vera was still on the monkey bars. Jonah was gone." "Convenient," Derek muttered. He crossed his arms, smirking. "A phone call nobody else heard. A disappearance nobody else saw." "There were other parents there," I insisted. "They helped me search—" "Parents you probably paid off," Constance interrupted, "or friends you convinced to lie for you." The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed, but the room was too suffocating for laughter. The people who should have been searching for Jonah were more invested in dissecting me. "Mr. Mira," Officer Hallstead said, turning to Derek, "yesterday you filed an emergency custody petition stating your ex-wife threatened to disappear with the children. Can you elaborate?" Derek's eyes brightened with a flash of triumph. He'd been waiting for this question. "She's been unstable since the divorce, lost her job, behind on rent, desperate. She told me she'd rather see the kids gone than let me have them." "That's not what I said," I snapped, but the words fell into silence. The officer's pen scratched across the page like a verdict. I could feel the narrative tightening around me. The unemployed single mother, bitter and unstable. The woman who couldn't braid her daughter's hair neatly enough. The one Constance described in careful notes and whispered gossip. Vera shifted in her seat. She hugged the rabbit tighter, her little chin resting on its head. For the first time since we'd entered, she spoke. Her voice was small, yet it rang through the room like a bell. "That's not true." Everyone froze. Derek's head snapped toward her, his mask slipping for an instant into open annoyance. "Vera, sweetheart, the adults are talking," he said, sugar dripping from his voice. But she stood, shoulders squared despite her trembling hands. "My daddy is lying, and I know where Jonah is." The room fell into a silence so heavy it was almost a sound in itself. My heart slammed against my ribs. Constance's mouth opened and closed without words. Derek went pale, his pacing halted. Officer Hallstead set down his pen slowly. His expression shifted, curiosity overtaking skepticism. "What do you mean, Vera?" Vera took a shaky breath. Her stuffed rabbit dangled from one arm, but her gaze locked on the officer with startling clarity. "I can show you where Daddy really hid my little brother." The air seemed to collapse inward. Derek made a strangled noise, half laugh, half denial. "She's confused. She doesn't know what she's talking about." But I saw something flicker in his eyes, a flash of panic, quickly buried. And in that instant, I knew. Vera had been holding on to something. Some truth she hadn't dared to release until now. The adults weren't in control anymore. My daughter was. The morning had started with light that felt almost merciful. Golden streaks poured through the kitchen window, warming the chipped countertop and the mismatched mugs in the drying rack. Coffee gurgled behind me, filling the air with a smell that always reminded me that despite everything, morning still came. Jonah was already on the living room floor in his dinosaur pajamas, staging epic battles between a battered fire truck and his toy T-Rex. He made the sound effects himself, explosions and roars that rattled the small apartment. "Boom! Crash! The red truck wins!" he announced to no one in particular, curls bouncing with each declaration. At the kitchen table, Vera sat with her workbook open, her little legs tucked neatly under the chair. 7 years old and already serious about everything. Her letters, her hair, the rules of any game. She sounded out each word under her breath, her pencil scratching carefully as though a teacher were watching. "Mom, what does courageous mean?" she asked suddenly, lifting those wide brown eyes that mirrored mine. I poured orange juice into her favorite purple cup and set it down gently. "It means being brave, even when you're scared. Like when you told the truth about who broke Grandpa's vase, even though you thought you'd get in trouble." She frowned thoughtfully, lips pursed. "So, kind of like telling the truth when no one believes you?" The words pricked at me, sharper than she intended. I smoothed her hair, forcing a smile. Exactly that. If only I'd known how much courage she would need before the day was over. We'd been adjusting, the three of us. 6 months since the divorce became final, and for the first time in years, the air inside our home felt breathable. The apartment was smaller than the old house, yes, but the absence of Derek's shadow gave it a sense of safety the big house never had. No more midnight arrivals reeking of perfume that wasn't mine. No more slammed doors. No more arguments pitched sharp enough to send the children running to their rooms. Derek hadn't wanted the divorce, at least not officially. He'd fought it tooth and nail, not out of love, but out of pride. Losing wasn't in his vocabulary. He was the real estate golden boy with a winning smile, and I was just the nurse who'd been laid off in the pandemic cutbacks. He thought the math was simple. He was the winner. I was the cautionary tale. But when the judge granted me primary custody, something in Derek cracked. The mask he wore for courts and social workers began slipping in ways only I seemed to notice. "Mommy, are we seeing Daddy this weekend?" Jonah asked, toddling in with his fire truck clutched tight. "Not this weekend, baby. Next weekend's his turn." That was the schedule. Every other weekend, alternating holidays. It was supposed to give stability. Instead, it became a battleground. Derek insisted I was alienating the kids from him. He claimed I manipulated them with my bitterness. His mother, Constance, played secretary to his outrage, keeping meticulous notes in her little spiral-bound book. She'd shown up at school pickups with her pen poised, jotting down the exact time I arrived. Noted when Vera's braid was lopsided, when Jonah had a runny nose. My lawyer had warned me, "She's building a case. You need to build one too." So I had. The folder in my bedroom grew thick with receipts, doctor's reports, progress notes from teachers, photos of the kids smiling in spite of it all. Proof they were thriving. Meanwhile, Derek missed 3 child support payments but rolled up in a shiny new BMW. He returned the kids late because Amber, his girlfriend, wanted them at her pool party. Vera came home sunburned, muttering that Daddy's friend keeps trying to be our new mommy. Those were the hairline cracks in his perfect mask. Jonah tugged at my sleeve. "Can we make pancakes?" With chocolate chips? I asked. He grinned, eyes sparkling. With lots. I reached for the mixing bowl, and the three of us worked together, Vera measuring flour precisely, Jonah spilling half the chocolate chips on the table, me trying to keep syrup from getting everywhere. For a moment, it was simple. Just us, laughter echoing louder than the ghosts Derek left behind. As I set the whisk down, Vera asked, "Mom, why does Grandma Constance hate us?" The question stopped me cold. "She doesn't hate you, sweetheart." "She hates you, though," Vera said matter-of-factly. "She told Mrs. Patterson at the grocery store, 'You're an unfit mother.' I heard her." I crouched beside her chair, brushing a stray curl behind her ear. Sometimes adults say hurtful things because they're angry or scared. But what matters is this. I love you and Jonah more than all the stars in the sky. More than all the pancakes in the world. Jonah, face sticky with batter, chimed in. "Even more than chocolate chips?" I laughed, kissing his forehead. Even more than that. Breakfast that morning was messy and loud and perfect. Syrup streaked across the table, Vera cutting her pancakes into exact squares while Jonah smeared his across his shirt. The evaluator the court had sent weeks earlier had noted how securely attached the kids were to me. He'd written that despite financial struggles, they seemed happy and well-adjusted. I clung to those words, proof that the children I'd raised weren't broken by the divorce. "Can we go to the park today?" Vera asked as she rinsed her plate. "Jonah wants to feed the ducks." I smiled. "Of course, we'll go after lunch." Those small promises, those normal rhythms, I thought they meant we were safe. I didn't realize then that every detail of our morning, the definition of courage, Constance's poison, Derek's hunger for control, was already aligning into a storm I couldn't stop. Later, when the swing stood empty and my chest filled with terror, I'd replay this moment over and over, the smell of pancakes, Vera's serious little face, Jonah's sticky grin. I'd wonder if I should have seen the cracks widening, if I should have held them closer. But that morning, the sun was warm, the coffee was strong, and for a fleeting hour, it felt like life had finally given us peace. Riverside Park was alive with the hum of families savoring what felt like one of the last warm Saturdays before autumn tightened its grip. The air smelled faintly of damp leaves and grilled hot dogs from a vendor near the entrance. Children's laughter clattered against the backdrop of barking dogs in the off-leash area. Jonah nearly leapt out of his car seat when I opened the buckle. "Swings first! Swings first!" he shouted, legs kicking wildly. I smiled despite myself. Okay, swings first." He grabbed my hand and tugged me toward the playground, while Vera trailed behind with her backpack slung over one shoulder, looking more like a teenager than a second grader. The park was crowded. Parents balanced coffees and conversations. Kids ran like sparks set loose on dry grass. I lifted Jonah into the toddler swing, the one with the high back and the safety bar. His little hands clutched the chains, knuckles whitening with glee as I pushed him gently. "Higher, Mommy, touch the sky!" His giggles rose with each arc, the sound so pure it cut through everything else. Vera, meanwhile, had already staked her claim on the monkey bars, her arms strained, her determined little face set as if she were in the Olympics. I kept my eyes on both of them, rocking Jonah in his rhythm, counting silently in my head the way mothers do when every second matters. Then my phone buzzed. Nolan's face flashed on the caller ID, my brother. I almost didn't answer, but Dad's heart surgery was scheduled for Monday, and every call from family felt urgent. "Keep swinging, baby," I told Jonah, stepping back only a few feet to the nearest bench. I could still see both kids. The swing moved steady. Vera hung mid-bar, focused. "Ren," Nolan said immediately. His voice was tight. "Dad's surgeon wants to move the surgery to Tuesday. Mom's freaking out, says it's a bad sign." "It's not," I said, eyes darting back to Jonah. He laughed, kicking his sneakers against the air. "Tell her Tuesday just gives them more prep time. That's good." "Can you call her? She'll listen to you more than me." "I will, tonight after the kids are in bed. Right now I'm at the park." "Okay, just thanks, Ren." We hung up. The call lasted maybe 90 seconds. When I looked back, the swing was moving gently, but it was empty. For a heartbeat, my brain refused to process it. I blinked, scanning the ground, expecting to see Jonah crouch nearby, tying his shoe, wandering toward the slide. "Jonah," my voice cracked. Vera dropped from the bars, landing hard on her feet. "Where is he, Mom? He was right there." I searched the slides first, the sandbox, the plastic playhouse. Nothing. My pulse hammered. "Jonah!" I shouted, louder now, drawing attention. Other parents turned, their chatter silenced by the pitch of panic in my voice. A woman with twin boys joined me. What's he wearing? Green dinosaur shirt, blue shorts, sneakers with lights, I said, breath short, words tumbling too fast. Check the bathrooms, another father said, sprinting toward the brick building near the field. Within minutes, half the playground was searching. Strangers called his name, ducked behind trees, peered into the parking lot. But my son was gone. I dialed Derek with shaking fingers. The phone nearly slipped from my sweaty palm. Jonah's missing, I said the instant he picked up. We're at Riverside Park. I can't find him. There was a pause. Then his voice, sharp and accusing. What do you mean you can't find him? How do you lose a 3-year-old? I looked away for 90 seconds. Just 90. Please, just get here. I'm on my way. 12 minutes later, the police arrived. 12 minutes that stretched into something unbearable. Officer Hallstead emerged first, tall, expression steady but skeptical as soon as he saw me. And then Derek's BMW rolled in, gleaming like a shark, sliding into shallow water. Constance climbed out beside him, clutching her notebook like a sacred text. Her voice carried before her feet even touched the pavement. I knew something like this would happen. I've been documenting her negligence for months. 3 feet, I whispered. I was 3 feet away. But Derek was already pulling Hallstead aside, his voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. She's been unstable since the divorce. Lost her job, can't pay her bills. I filed for emergency custody yesterday because I was afraid something exactly like this would happen. Yesterday. The word hit me like ice water. He hadn't mentioned filing anything. Why yesterday? I spun toward him. You never told me that. Why would I? His eyes glimmered with satisfaction. So you could run off with them before the court decided? Hallstead scribbled notes on his pad, his glance shifting between us like he was watching a script play out. Check her phone records, Derek said, voice full of authority. Check her bank statements. She's desperate. Probably sold him for drug money. The words were so outrageous I almost laughed. Drug money? I don't even drink. Constance stepped closer, hand on her son's arm in a show of solidarity. Officer, I've watched her deteriorate. Vindictive, unstable, dangerous. I always said she'd be the death of those kids. The crowd murmured. I could feel their judgment pressing in, heavy as chains. I tried to focus on Vera, standing small but fierce beside me, her hand clutching mine. Her lips were moving silently, as if she were repeating something to herself. Later, I would realize she had already been rehearsing the words she would say when the time came. But in that moment, the park no longer felt like a place for children. It was a courtroom, and I was already on trial. The interrogation room smelled like stale coffee and disinfectant, the kind of odor that clung to your clothes long after you left. They called it a voluntary interview, but nothing about it felt voluntary. The walls seemed to lean closer each minute, their beige paint absorbing my words before they could reach the man sitting across from me. Officer Hallstead had traded his computer for a yellow legal pad, his pen scratching deliberately across the page. Every movement of his wrist sounded like a judgment being inked. Derek stood in the corner, arms folded, playing the role of the vigilant father. He leaned against the wall like he owned the place, as if the entire room existed to give him the stage he'd been waiting for. Constance sat rigid at his side, notebook open, pen poised, the tip already stained with fresh ink. She didn't look at me. She looked through me, like I was already a ghost. Walk me through the phone call again, Hallstead said, tone carefully neutral. Start to finish. My brother Nolan called about our dad's heart surgery, I explained, hands twisting together. The call lasted maybe 90 seconds. I was at the bench. Jonah was in the swing. Vera was on the monkey bars. I never lost sight of them. But you did lose sight, Derek cut in. If you were watching, Jonah wouldn't be missing. Mr. Mira, let her answer, Hallstead said mildly, but he made another note on his pad. I could almost hear Derek's satisfaction in the silence. Through the small square window in the door, I caught sight of Vera. They'd placed her in what they called the children's room. A social worker, Mrs. Chen, sat beside her at a low table covered in crayons and blank paper. Vera's small head bent low as she drew with ferocious concentration. Her tongue poked out slightly, the way it always did when she focused. She looked too serious for a child surrounded by coloring supplies. Mrs. Mira, Hallstead said, drawing me back, your ex-husband has provided us with some concerning information. He claims you threatened to disappear with the children. That's not true, I said firmly. Derek slipped his phone from his pocket like a magician producing a card. I have it recorded. His thumb hovered over the screen with theatrical precision. Then he pressed play. My own voice filled the room, distorted, broken by static. I can't let you take the children. Never see them again. My blood ran cold. I recognized the cadence, the words, but not like this. That's edited, I whispered, pulse hammering. Those are pieces from different conversations. I told him he couldn't take the kids to Florida because I'd never see them again. He's planning to move with Amber. He spliced it together. She's lying, Constance snapped. Her voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent decades convincing others she was always right. She's manipulative. Ask anyone in the neighborhood. Ask the teachers. She's unstable. The teachers love me, I said desperately. Mrs. Morrison told me last week Vera is thriving, despite... Because you probably bribed her, Constance cut in. Money always talks. Money? The laugh that left my throat was sharp, humorless. Your son hasn't paid child support in 3 months. He bought a BMW instead. Hallstead raised a hand, silencing us. He slid a document across the table. This is the emergency custody petition filed yesterday. It lists several incidents of alleged neglect, leaving the children unsupervised, tardy pickups, failure to provide adequate meals. Failure to provide meals? I repeated, incredulous. Because I gave them McDonald's once after a doctor's appointment ran late? Fast food is not proper nutrition, Constance interjected crisply. I raised Derek on home-cooked meals every night. Look how he turned out. I almost choked on the irony. Hallstead's pen scratched again. Mrs. Mira, have you been experiencing financial difficulties? I'm a single mother. Money is tight. But my children are cared for. Their teachers, their pediatrician, their evaluator, all of them will tell you that. Except one of them is missing right now, Derek said coldly. His voice dropped lower, softer, like he was delivering a closing argument. She let him disappear. I wanted to scream, help me find him, don't bury me, but I knew fury would only fuel their story. Through the glass, Vera stopped coloring. She set down her crayon and stood. Mrs. Chen tried gently to guide her back to the table, but Vera shook her head. Her mouth moved, and even through the glass I could see the shape of her words. They're wrong. The door opened. Mrs. Chen followed, apologetic. I'm sorry, she insisted. Sweetheart, go back, Derek said smoothly, slipping into his saccharine father voice. Mommy and Daddy are just talking to the nice officer. You're not talking, Vera said flatly. You're lying. The room went still. That recording is fake, she added, gripping her rabbit tighter. I was there for all those conversations. Mom said you couldn't take us to Florida. She said she couldn't let you take us away where she'd never see us again. That's all. Hallstead leaned forward, interest sparking for the first time. Derek's jaw clenched, a muscle twitching. He calculated, like he always did. Vera, you're confused. You don't understand adult things. I understand enough, she said, her small frame straightening. She placed her drawing on the table with deliberate care. It wasn't a random picture. It was a map, crudely drawn in purple and green crayon. And the moment I saw it, I realized Vera had been holding more than paper. She'd been holding the truth. Vera's fingers smoothed the edges of the crayon map as if she were placing something sacred on the table. The paper was wrinkled, colors overlapping in a child's clumsy precision, but her voice was steady when she spoke. Yesterday, when Daddy picked us up, he told Jonah they were going to play a special game, she said. A hiding game for today. Derek shot to his feet so fast his chair scraped against the floor. She's making things up. Kids imagine stories when they're stressed. Sit down, Mr. Mira, Hallstead ordered, his voice hardening for the first time. But Vera didn't flinch. She looked directly at the officer. It wasn't pretend. Daddy made Jonah practice, 3 times, in the backyard. She held up 3 small fingers, trembling slightly. He gave him candy each time he did it right. Jonah had to run to the fence like it was Uncle Mason's truck. Get in fast. He told him that when Mommy wasn't looking at the park, he should run to the parking lot. Mason would take him to the cabin by the lake. The room went utterly still. Even Constance's pen froze midair. That's absurd, she said finally, voice brittle. A 3-year-old couldn't remember complicated instructions like that. Jonah's good at games, Vera said simply. He thought it was fun. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady the storm inside me. Mason. Derek's brother. The fishing cabin by the lake. My mind reeled, replaying details I had dismissed. The way Jonah had chirped special game after coming home last week, how Derek had shushed him quickly, claiming it was just pretend. Enough of this fantasy, Derek snapped, forcing a laugh. She had a dream, that's all. But Vera's eyes, so much like mine, were locked on Hallstead with a defiance beyond her years. It's not a dream. Jonah is at the cabin with Miss Amber, Daddy's girlfriend. She was supposed to watch him until Monday. Then Daddy would find him and be the hero. He told Grandma Constance about it on the phone, I heard. My stomach turned cold. I looked at Constance. For the first time, her face faltered. "You little liar," she hissed, rising halfway out of her chair. "How dare you?" "Enough!" Hallstead barked. His hand slammed against the table, rattling Vera's drawing, but not her courage. He turned to her gently. "Do you know the address of the cabin?" Vera nodded. 1847 Lakeshore Road. I remembered because it's the year our town was founded. We learned that in social studies. Hallstead was already on his phone, voice clipped as he called dispatch. The words blurred in my ears, but I caught fragments. Unit to cabin. Possible child recovery. Secure perimeter. Derek lunged forward. "You can't just believe a 7-year-old. She's been coached. This is her mother's manipulation?" Hallstead reached out calmly, removing Derek's phone from his grip. "We'll hold on to this for now." Rage cracked Derek's polished mask. "You can't do that. I want my lawyer." Beside him, Constance scrambled for her notebook, but Vera was faster. She bent, scooped it from the floor, and slid it across the table toward the officer. "Page 47, she said. "She wrote down the whole plan yesterday, even what to tell the police to make Mommy look bad." Constance lunged for it, but Hallstead's hand landed first. He opened it, scanning the neat, looping script. His eyebrows arched with each line. The silence that followed was suffocating. I looked at my daughter. Her rabbit dangled from one hand, her knuckles white. Her body trembled now that the words were out. But her face, God, her face, was fierce. "You're lying," Derek barked. "You're being used." But the denial rang hollow. The room had shifted. His power, so carefully constructed, was unraveling thread by thread. Hallstead spoke into his radio again, voice low but urgent. "All units confirm en route. ETA?" A pause. Then his expression sharpened. 10 minutes. I gripped the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. My baby boy, 10 minutes from being found. Or not. Constance pressed her hands flat against the table. "This is madness. Do you think a judge will believe the words of a child over the word of 2 responsible adults?" Hallstead looked up slowly, holding her gaze. "Yes, especially when the child gives us the address before either of you mention it." The sound Derek made was strangled. He looked cornered, like an animal caught between fight and flight. For the first time, I saw fear, not just anger, etch across his face. Vera stepped closer to me, sliding her hand into mine. Her rabbit squished between us, but she didn't let go. "Mommy," she whispered, voice shaking now. "He's okay. Jonah's okay. I know it." And I believed her. The wait stretched like hours, though the clock on the wall insisted it was only 20 minutes. I counted each tick of the second hand, each shuffle of papers, each time Derek's foot tapped against the floor in uneven bursts. Then Officer Hallstead's phone rang. The entire room froze as he answered, his voice clipped. "Hallstead." A pause. His eyes narrowed, then widened. "Repeat that?" Another pause. He exhaled slowly, his shoulders loosening in a way I hadn't seen since this nightmare began. "They found him," he announced, voice firm. "A 3-year-old boy, matching Jonah's description at the cabin on Lakeshore Road. Safe, eating ice cream, watching cartoons." The air rushed from my lungs. My body slumped back into the chair as tears poured hot down my face. Relief burned and shook through me in waves. So fierce it hurt. "They found him," I whispered, over and over, like I had to convince myself it was true. Beside me, Vera clutched her rabbit tighter, her face crumpling as the weight of holding it together all day finally broke. She leaned into me, and I gathered her against my chest. Across the room, Derek stumbled forward, grabbing at the table as if the floor had tilted beneath him. "This is a misunderstanding," he said quickly, words tumbling over one another. I was just trying to give Ren a break. She's been so stressed. I thought if she had some time alone this weekend." Hallstead raised a hand. "Then why didn't you tell anyone? Why accuse her of selling your son for drug money?" Derek's mouth opened and closed, his jaw working furiously, but nothing came out. The door opened, and another officer stepped in, holding a small notebook bagged in evidence plastic. He handed it to Hallstead, who flipped it open. Constance's handwriting, page after page of meticulous notes, stared back at us. dates, observations, lists of neglect that sounded more like gossip than fact. And near the back, lines that turned my stomach cold. Plan for Saturday. Jonah practice game. Confront Ren after disappearance. Emergency custody confirmed. Hallstead read silently for a long moment, then looked up at Derek and Constance. His eyes had gone hard. Mr. Mira, Mrs. Mira, you're both under arrest for filing a false report, custodial interference, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The click of handcuffs echoed like a gunshot. This is insane, Derek roared, struggling as the officer pulled his arms behind him. I want my lawyer. That notebook proves nothing. Amber will tell you. I just asked her to babysit. But the notebook told a story too clear to twist. Constance tried to rise with dignity, but her face was ashen. For once, her words failed her. She looked not at me, but at Vera, who held her gaze with a steadiness beyond her years. It was the first time I saw fear in Constance's eyes. Not fear of arrest, but of a little girl who no longer believed in her. The moment they led Derek and Constance from the room, everything else fell away. Because there he was, Jonah. His curls were messy, his cheeks sticky with chocolate ice cream, his dinosaur t-shirt stained with juice. But his smile, God, his smile, was radiant as he wriggled free of the officer escorting him and barreled straight into my arms. Mommy, I went on adventure, he shouted, his little voice bubbling with excitement. Miss Amber has 5 cats. She let me name them all Dinosaur. I crushed him to my chest so tightly he squeaked. I buried my face in his hair, inhaling the sweet mix of graham crackers and apple juice that clung to him. My tears soaked into his curls, but he didn't seem to notice. You're safe, I whispered, rocking him. You're safe. You're safe. Vera wrapped her arms around us, pressing her rabbit against Jonah's back. For the first time in hours, my family was whole. Behind us, Derek shouted as officers dragged him through the hall. This isn't over. You'll regret this. I'm still their father. His voice cracked, the desperation stripping the polish from his words. Amber's name floated through the chaos. She'd been found at the cabin, bewildered, claiming Derek told her he'd arranged an extra weekend with the kids. To her, it was babysitting, nothing more. She had no idea Jonah was missing. Her innocence made the crime sharper. Derek had used everyone around him, his girlfriend, his brother Mason, even his mother, to orchestrate a plan designed to break me. But the plan unraveled under the smallest voice in the room. When Jonah finally dozed off in my lap, his sticky fingers still gripping the hem of my shirt, I looked over at Vera. Her face was pale, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. You saved him, I whispered into her hair. You saved us all. She shrugged faintly. I just told the truth. But I could feel the tremor in her body, the way adrenaline was leaving her hollow. Outside the window, 2 police cars idled, their red and blue lights painting the station walls in harsh pulses. Derek and Constance sat cuffed inside them, their silhouettes smaller than I had ever seen. Sozi-san. I knew this wasn't the end. There would be custody hearings, courtrooms, testimony. Jonah would wake in the night with new fears. Vera would carry the weight of what she'd seen and heard. And me, I would have to rebuild, brick by brick, from the wreckage Derek left behind. But for that one fragile moment, with Jonah asleep against me and Vera's hand still holding mine, I let myself breathe. Because we were together. And no scheme, no lies, no courtroom performance had been strong enough to tear that apart. 3 months later, I sat in the hushed stillness of family court, a place where the walls were lined with certificates and the air smelled faintly of paper and disinfectant. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed softly, a sound that reminded me too much of the police station where everything had begun. The judge was a woman with silver hair pulled into a low bun, glasses perched halfway down her nose. She looked more like a grandmother reading bedtime stories than the authority who now held our futures in her hands. But her eyes were sharp, and her voice cut through the courtroom with the precision of a scalpel. Mr. Mira, she said, peering over her glasses, you orchestrated an elaborate scheme to traumatize your children and destroy their mother's reputation, all in an effort to gain custody. Derek sat at the defense table, his lawyer whispering furiously into his ear. He wore a tailored suit that fit him like armor, but nothing could mask the pallor of his skin. For once, his smile, the one that sold houses and charmed neighbors, was nowhere to be found. His lawyer rose, trying to sound confident. Your Honor, my client was under extreme stress during the dissolution of his marriage. He may have made poor choices, but there was no malicious intent. No malicious intent? The judge's voice sharpened. She lifted Constance's notebook, its pages bagged and entered into evidence. This document details practice drills, conversations, even what Mr. Mira should say to the police to discredit his ex-wife. 6 months of dated entries. She let the notebook drop onto the bench with a thud that echoed across the room. Derek flinched. The prosecution called Amber Fitzgerald. She walked nervously to the stand, clutching her purse as if it could shield her. She was younger than I remembered, her blonde hair pulled back into a ponytail that made her look like a college student caught in the wrong play. I didn't know, she said, her voice shaking. He told me Ren had agreed to give him an extra weekend. He asked me to watch Jonah at the cabin. I thought it was normal. I thought it was family stuff. If I'd known... She trailed off, guilt flooding her face. Her testimony, paired with Mason's text messages confirming the plan, painted the picture too vividly for even Derek's lawyer to blur. When it was my turn to speak, my hands trembled as I swore the oath. I told the court about the park, the phone call, the empty swing, about Vera's courage, about Jonah's confusion when he returned, still thinking it had been a game. And your daughter? The judge asked. I looked over at Vera, who sat with a child advocate near the back. She wore her favorite purple headband, her stuffed rabbit tucked discreetly into her lap. Her eyes met mine, steady and solemn. She told the truth, I said simply. When none of us were being believed, she found her voice. She saved her brother. The judge leaned back, considering. Remarkable integrity for someone so young. She turned her gaze to Derek. More integrity, I dare say, than her father has demonstrated. When the ruling came, my breath caught. Full custody is awarded to the mother, Mrs. Ren Mira. Mr. Mira will be granted supervised visitation, 2 hours every other Sunday, in a court-approved facility. She paused, letting the words settle like heavy stones. This court does not take lightly a parent who weaponizes his own child. The gavel struck once, final. Derek's lawyer slumped back in his chair. Derek stared at the table, jaw clenched so tightly I thought it might break. His face was a mask of humiliation, but I knew beneath it was fury, the kind that didn't fade quickly. Constance, sitting in the gallery, shook her head slowly, as though the whole courtroom had betrayed her. But for once, her notebook had no more power. As the crowd dispersed, Derek's sister, Melanie, approached me cautiously. We had always been polite, even warm, before the divorce, but she had stayed silent during the custody battle. I'm sorry, she whispered, her eyes shining. I knew Mom could be vindictive, but I didn't imagine they'd go that far. If you need anything, if the kids need anything, please call me. I nodded, though trust would take time. Apologies didn't erase silence, and silence had nearly cost me my son. Healing wasn't linear. That's what our therapist reminded us week after week. Some nights, Vera woke crying, terrified someone would steal Jonah again. Some mornings, Jonah asked why Daddy couldn't come to his preschool play. And some days, I caught my own reflection in the mirror and saw not victory, but exhaustion. Yet there were signs of light. Vera started gymnastics, channeling her fierce determination into flips and cartwheels on a mat in our new backyard. Jonah's laughter filled the duplex, his dinosaurs roaring across the grass. The neighbors, an older couple with gentle smiles, adopted us as honorary family, inviting the kids over for cookies and stories. One night, as I tucked Vera in, she asked the hardest question yet. Mom, do you think Daddy ever really loved us? I froze, searching for the right words. I think he loves you the only way he knows how. But sometimes people get so focused on winning that they forget what they're fighting for. Your dad, he forgot that being a parent isn't about winning. It's about love. Vera looked down at her rabbit, stroking its worn ears. I feel sorry for him, she said softly. He lost us by trying to keep us. Her wisdom stunned me. At 7 years old, she saw the truth clearer than most adults. I kissed her forehead. You're right. And for the first time in months, I believed we were not just surviving, we were healing. 6 months after the day the park swallowed my son, I returned to Riverside with both of my children. The air smelled different this time, lighter, tinged with freshly cut grass and the faint sweetness of spring blossoms. The playground had been repainted. The monkey bars gleamed with new green paint and the swings creaked with freshly oiled chains. But for me, the place still pulsed with memory, every corner echoing with the panic that once hollowed me out. Jonah ran ahead, his legs sturdier now, his curls bouncing as he shouted, "Swings, Mommy! Swings again!" He had no memory of the terror. To him, Riverside was just a place where ducks waddled near the pond and where he could fly into the sky if I pushed hard enough. Vera followed at a slower pace, her rabbit tucked under her arm, though its fur had worn thin. She had grown, not just taller but older in ways childhood should delay. The girl who once whispered definitions of courage at the kitchen table now carried it openly, as though she had forged it herself in fire. I eased Jonah into the toddler swing. His legs kicked, sneakers flashing light with each arc. His laughter rose, free and unburdened. I kept my hands on the chain longer than I needed to, my grip reluctant to let go. The memory of the empty swing still haunted me, the way it had rocked slightly in the breeze, taunting me with absence. Even now, my chest tightened at the thought. And then my phone rang. The sound sliced through me like a blade. My body stiffened, breath catching in my throat. My hand twitched toward the pocket where the phone buzzed, but my eyes clung desperately to Jonah. For one agonizing second, I was back there. September sun burning my shoulders, the call from Nolan about Dad's surgery, the swing empty when I looked up. "Mom!" The word was calm, steady, Vera's voice. I turned. She was standing on the monkey bars, balanced carefully, her head tilted with the wisdom of someone who had lived too much too soon. "It's okay," she said softly. "We're right here. We're not going anywhere." The sound of her voice unraveled the knot inside me. I exhaled, slow and shaky, and pulled the phone out. A spam call. I silenced it and slid it back into my pocket, my hands trembling. I pushed Jonah higher, listening to his giggles echo against the trees. I watched Vera drop gracefully from the monkey bars and dust off her hands. And I realized something. This park no longer held me hostage. It was ours again. The months since the custody ruling had not been simple. Derek's supervised visits were awkward. 2 sterile hours, in a monitored facility. He had tried to charm the staff, crack jokes, reclaim his polished image, but the children remained distant. Jonah grew restless quickly, asking for me. Vera often refused to go at all, clinging to my side. The criminal case lingered in the background. Derek's lawyer bargaining, Constance attempting denials. Mason distanced himself, claiming ignorance. Amber disappeared from town. But in our home, life slowly stitched itself back together. I found work at a pediatric clinic. Better hours, steadier pay. We moved to a duplex with a small backyard where Jonah could roar with his dinosaurs and Vera could cartwheel across the grass. The retired couple next door became honorary grandparents, filling the hole Constance had left with warmth that felt like healing. And in quiet moments, I found my own strength reshaping. Derek had tried to weaponize my children to break me, but in the end, it was Vera who had weaponized the truth. "Mom?" Jonah's voice cut through my thoughts. He tilted his head back in the swing, grinning upside down. "Push higher!" I laughed, real laughter this time, and gave him the sky. The phone buzzed again in my pocket, but I ignored it. My eyes stayed on my children, one soaring, one steady. Vera climbed back onto the bars, calling, "Watch me, Mom!" She swung herself across with confident strength, her movements sure. Each time her hands gripped the metal, I thought of the day she had gripped the truth and refused to let go. I thought about the judge's words, about how a 7-year-old girl had shown more integrity than her father, about how courage wasn't an abstract word from a workbook. It was Vera, standing in that interrogation room with nothing but a crayon map and the determination to be heard. And I thought about Jonah, safe now, oblivious to the danger he'd been placed in. His innocence had been exploited, but his spirit remained unbroken. When Derek tried to win by control, he lost everything that mattered. I would not let that be our legacy. As the sun dipped lower, painting the park in soft gold, I gathered my children close. Jonah wriggled, giggling, while Vera leaned her head against my arm. "Do you know what courage means now?" I asked quietly. Vera smiled faintly. "It means telling the truth, even when people don't want to hear it." "And love?" I pressed. Her eyes softened. "Love means never making someone a game." I kissed the top of her head, tears burning but not falling. We left the park hand in hand, the swing chains clinking behind us, no longer a sound of loss, but of reclamation, because we were exactly where we belonged, together, safe, free. And the smallest voice in the room had taught us all that truth, steady, fearless, unshaken, will always outlast the loudest lie.